The cold October wind blew hard through the small town of Ashbury in the north of England. It was so chilly that Noah Carter pulled his coat's collar up higher to cover his face. His backpack bounced on his shoulders as he hurried to school. His breath made little white clouds in the cold air. Noah always used a shortcut through an alley. It saved him 10 minutes, which felt great, especially now that the mornings were freezing. The alley was quiet, with only some old trash bins and piles of dry leaves in the corners. Noah had walked this way so many times before and never had a problem. To him, it was just a quick and quiet path between two streets. But today felt strange. As he walked, the usual sounds of the town, like cars and people talking, grew quieter. It wasn't just silent. It was a strange, heavy silence. Something felt wrong, though Noah couldn't explain why. Then he heard it, a soft sound, almost too quiet to notice. He stopped walking and listened hard. Was it the wind? No, it sounded different. It was a tiny, weak cry. He looked around the alley, confused. Then he heard it again, a little clearer this time. It was the sound of a baby crying. Noah froze. His heart started beating fast. A baby? Out here? In this cold? The thought made him shiver. For a moment, his legs wouldn't move. He didn't know what to do. His dad always told him not to get involved in other people's problems. Mind your own business, his dad would say. And this felt like one of those problems. Noah was just 12 years old. What could he do about a baby left out here? He thought about walking away and pretending he hadn't heard anything. Maybe someone else would find the baby, someone who knew what to do. But then guilt started to creep in. What if no one else came? What if the baby needed help right now? The crying seemed louder in his head, and Noah felt terrible. He couldn't just leave. What if the baby didn't make it? Taking a deep breath, Noah decided to check. His legs felt shaky as he took small, careful steps toward the sound. The crying was coming from a pile of trash against the alley wall. The closer he got, the worse it smelled. It was a mix of rotten food and old garbage. Noah tried not to gag as he moved one of the trash bags aside. And there, under a dirty old blanket, he saw it, a tiny baby. The baby was pale, almost blue, wrapped in a torn piece of cloth. Its eyes were half closed, and it wasn't crying much anymore. It was barely breathing. The baby looked so weak and small, it made Noah's chest hurt. For a moment, Noah just stared. His mind went blank. Who would leave a baby like this? It didn't seem real. His hands hovered over the baby. Should he pick it up? Should he call someone? What if he hurt it by moving it? But Noah knew one thing. If he didn't act, the baby might not survive. Carefully, he reached down and picked up the baby. It was so light, so cold, it gave him goosebumps. He wrapped the blanket tighter around it to keep it warm. With the baby in his arms, Noah started walking. Then he began to run. His legs felt heavy, but he didn't stop. He ran straight to the hospital, just a few blocks away. When Noah got there, the hospital doors opened automatically, and he stumbled inside. The warm air hit his face, but he barely noticed. "Help, please," he shouted, his voice cracking. "It's a baby. I found a baby." A nurse at the front desk looked up and saw him. Her eyes widened when she saw the baby in his arms. She rushed over. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. "What happened? Where did you find this baby?" Noah tried to explain, but his voice shook. "I found it in an alley in the trash," he managed to say. "Come with me," the nurse said quickly. Another nurse brought over a bed with wheels. They gently took the baby from Noah's arms and placed it on the bed. Noah hesitated, his hands still reaching out as they wheeled the baby away. The nurses worked fast, checking the baby's breathing and heartbeat. Then they rushed it through a pair of swinging doors, out of sight. Noah stood there, frozen. His heart was pounding. A nurse touched his arm, pulling him out of his daze. "Are you okay?" she asked. Noah shook his head. "Will the baby be okay?" he asked softly. The nurse sighed. "The baby is in bad shape, but you brought it here just in time. You did the right thing." The words felt strange. Noah didn't feel brave. He remembered how he almost walked away. But now, looking at the empty hallway where the baby had been taken, he felt glad he didn't. A doctor came over to talk to Noah. He explained that the baby was very sick, but the hospital would do everything they could to help. "You did something amazing," the doctor said. "You saved this baby's life." Noah nodded slowly, but his heart still felt heavy. What would happen to the baby now? What if it didn't survive? The doctor said they would call the police to investigate. They needed to find out who left the baby in the alley and why. If the baby gets better, the doctor said, it might go to a foster family or be adopted. But right now, we're focusing on helping it survive. Noah sat on a bench, holding a cup of water the nurse had given him. His hands were still trembling. He couldn't stop thinking about the tiny, fragile baby he had found in the trash. He hoped with all his heart that the baby would be okay. The lights above flickered, and the hallway felt heavy and quiet. He hadn't moved since the doctor had told him how the baby he had found was doing. His legs bounced nervously, and he kept staring at the big double doors, hoping the next person to come out would tell him good news about the baby. Noah's mind kept going back to that morning. He had taken his usual shortcut to school through the alley behind the shops. Everything was so quiet until he heard a tiny, sad cry. He followed the sound and saw a pile of garbage bags. When he got closer, he found a tiny baby wrapped in a dirty, torn blanket. The baby looked so small and weak. Noah felt scared but knew he had to help. He picked up the baby carefully and ran as fast as he could to the hospital. Now, sitting in the hospital, Noah couldn't stop thinking about the baby. Who would leave a baby like that? Why would anyone hurt something so helpless? It made him feel sad and angry at the same time. His stomach felt tight just thinking about it. After what felt like forever, Noah saw the doctor walking toward him. The doctor's face looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Noah's heart started beating fast. He stood up nervously as the doctor stopped in front of him. Noah, the doctor said gently, we need to talk. Noah's chest felt heavy. He followed the doctor to a small room with plain blue walls and stiff chairs. The doctor sat across from Noah and sighed. The baby is stable for now, the doctor said, looking at Noah carefully. But the situation is still very serious. The baby was very weak when you brought it in. It's going to take time for the baby's body to recover. Noah swallowed hard. So, the baby is going to be okay? He asked quietly. The doctor's face grew serious. We're hopeful, he said, but it's too early to say for sure. There are still a lot of problems we're watching closely. The baby also has bruises and a broken rib that wasn't treated. It looks like someone hurt the baby before it was abandoned. Noah felt his stomach twist. Someone had hurt the baby? His fists clenched as he thought about it. How could anyone do that to something so small and innocent? He couldn't believe someone would be so cruel. The doctor must have noticed how upset Noah was. He leaned forward and said softly, Noah, you did the right thing. You saved the baby's life by bringing it here when you did. Without you, the baby wouldn't have made it. Noah nodded, but it didn't make him feel better. He thought about the baby lying there, hurt and alone, and it made him feel sad all over again. What happens now? Noah asked after a moment. First, we focus on making the baby healthy again, the doctor explained. After that, social services will take over. They'll work with the police to find out who left the baby in the alley, and if the baby's family can take care of it. If they can't, the baby will go into foster care, or maybe even be adopted. Adopted? Noah's chest felt tight. He thought about kids he knew who were adopted. Some had good families, but others didn't. What if the baby ended up somewhere bad? The idea made him feel even more worried. Will I ever see the baby again? Noah asked. The doctor looked surprised. Maybe, he said, but once social services takes over, they'll be in charge. You can call the hospital for updates, though. Noah nodded, but his heart felt heavy. He didn't want to just walk away now. He had found the baby. Didn't that mean something? He wanted to make sure it would be okay. There was a knock on the door, and a tall man in a suit walked in. He had dark hair and a serious face, with a badge clipped to his belt. Noah could tell he was a detective. Noah, the man said, sitting down across from him. I'm Detective Marcus Blake. I need to ask you some questions about what happened. Noah's hands fidgeted in his lap. Okay, he said quietly. You're not in trouble, the detective said, his voice calm. You did a really brave thing today. But we need to know what happened so we can help the baby and figure out who's responsible. Noah nodded. He told the detective everything. About the alley, the cry, the pile of trash, and how he had found the baby. The detective listened carefully, writing notes, but not interrupting. Did you see anyone near the alley? The detective asked. Noah shook his head. No, it was quiet. I didn't see anyone. The detective wrote something in his notebook and stood up. Thank you, Noah. That helps a lot. We'll take it from here. Noah watched him leave, feeling like everything was slipping out of his hands. The baby's future was up to other people now, but Noah still felt like he had to do something. The next morning, Noah woke up with the same heavy feeling in his chest. He hadn't slept much. His dreams were filled with the baby's cries. At breakfast, his dad noticed. "You okay, Noah?" his dad asked. Noah hesitated. "I found a baby yesterday," he said finally. "It was in the alley, and it was really bad. I took it to the hospital, but now I don't know what's going to happen to it." His dad looked shocked. "A baby? Noah, why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know how," Noah admitted. "I just want to check on it. I need to know it's okay." His dad nodded and smiled softly. "Let me drive you to the hospital," he offered. Noah's heart lifted a little. "Really?" "Yeah," his dad said. "You got a big heart, Noah. Let's go." The drive to the hospital was quiet. Noah stared out the window, his thoughts spinning. When they got there, he hurried inside, hoping for good news. A new nurse greeted them at the desk, and Noah's heart raced as he waited to find out if the baby was okay. He looked at the nurse and said, I'm here to check on a baby. I brought it in yesterday." The nurse gave him a kind smile and looked at her computer. "Do you mean the baby that was left behind?" she asked gently. Noah nodded, though the word "left behind" made his chest feel tight. "Yeah, that one." The nurse typed on her computer, then nodded. "The baby is stable right now. The doctors are keeping a close eye on it. But it's good news that the baby's condition hasn't gotten worse." Now let out a big breath. Stable. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than worrying all night. "Can I see the baby?" he asked. The nurse shook her head, her smile fading a little. "I'm sorry, but you can't visit yet. The baby is in the intensive care unit. Only doctors and social workers are allowed in there for now. But I can get Dr. Elise Monroe to come talk to you if you'd like." Noah felt sad but nodded. "Okay, that would be great. Thanks." The nurse left to find the doctor. Noah sat in the waiting room with his dad, feeling a mix of feelings he couldn't quite explain. Knowing the baby was stable helped a little, but so many questions still filled his mind. Would the baby get better? Would they find out who left it? And what would happen to the baby next? His dad must have noticed how quiet he was because he gave Noah a little nudge on the shoulder. "You're doing great, Noah. I know it's hard to feel like you're not in control, but you've already done more than most people would." Noah looked down and said quietly, "I just don't know what will happen to the baby. What if it never gets adopted? What if it gets lost in the system?" His dad gave him a sad but understanding look. "That's a tough question, son. I wish I had an answer for you. But one thing I do know, because of you, that baby has a chance, and no one can take that away." Before Noah could respond, Dr. Elise Monroe walked over with a kind but tired smile. "Noah, I'm glad you're here," Dr. Elise Monroe said. "I heard you wanted an update." Noah jumped to his feet, anxious. "Is the baby okay?" Dr. Elise Monroe nodded. "Yes, the baby is stable, which is a good sign. Its vitals have improved, and we're giving it fluids and proper nutrition to help it get stronger." Noah felt his shoulders relax, and a small smile crept onto his face. "That's really good news." Dr. Elise Monroe's face turned serious. "It is, but we're still being very careful. The baby was in critical condition when you brought it in, so it'll take time. But you should be proud, Noah. You saved that baby's life." Noah nodded, but the doctor's words didn't make the worry in his chest go away. There were still so many things to figure out. "What will happen to the baby now?" Noah asked, his voice shaky. Dr. Elise Monroe sighed. "Social services is involved. They're handling the case now. The police are also investigating to find out who left the baby in the alley, but it might take time." Noah's stomach twisted. What if they don't find the person who did it? What happens to the baby then? Dr. Elise Monroe looked at Noah's dad, then back at him. "If the baby's family can't be found, or if they aren't able to take care of the baby, it will go into foster care. Eventually, the baby might be adopted. The important thing is that the baby will be safe." The word foster care made Noah's heart ache. He thought of his friend Jake, who had been in foster care. Jake had moved from home to home and never really felt like he belonged anywhere. The idea of that happening to the baby made Noah feel like crying. "Is there anything I can do?" Noah asked softly. Dr. Elise Monroe smiled kindly, but sadly. "You've already done so much, Noah. Right now, the best thing you can do is trust the system. I know it's hard, but you've given that baby a chance. That's no small thing." Noah nodded even though he didn't feel satisfied. He followed his dad out of the hospital, feeling the weight of everything pressing on him. That night, and for many nights after, Noah couldn't stop thinking about the baby. Every morning before school and every afternoon after, Noah and his dad stopped by the hospital for updates. The news was always the same, stable but still critical. It wasn't the perfect answer Noah wanted, but it gave him hope. On the fourth day, Dr. Elise Monroe met them with a big smile. "The baby has been moved out of intensive care," he said. "It's a very positive step." Noah's heart raced. "Can I see the baby now?" Dr. Elise Monroe thought for a moment, then nodded. "Just for a few minutes. Social services is being very strict, but since you saved the baby, I'll make an exception." Noah followed Dr. Elise Monroe down the hallway, his dad staying behind in the lobby. As they reached the nursery, Noah's heart pounded. He had imagined this moment for days, but now he felt nervous. What if the baby didn't remember him? What if it didn't matter that he had been the one to save it? Dr. Elise Monroe led Noah to a small room. There, in a bassinet, was the baby, wrapped in a soft blanket. The baby looked healthier than before, its tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Noah stepped closer, tears in his eyes. "Hi," he whispered. "It's me." The baby stirred, letting out a soft coo. Noah's heart swelled as he reached out, his hand hovering over the baby's tiny fingers. Finally, he let his fingers touch the baby's hand. The baby's fingers curled around his, and Noah felt like everything else in the world disappeared. Weeks passed, and the baby grew stronger. Social services took over, and the baby was placed with a foster family. Noah missed the baby, but he tried to focus on the fact that it was safe and cared for. Dr. Elise Monroe promised to keep Noah updated. 1 month later, Noah came home from school and found Dr. Elise Monroe waiting on his porch. "Noah," Dr. Elise Monroe said, "I have some news. The baby is with a foster family now. They're kind and loving. The baby is doing very well." Noah felt relief wash over him. "That's great," he said, though his voice trembled with emotion. "The foster family wants to know if you'd like to stay involved," Dr. Elise Monroe added. "They know what you did for the baby and would like you to visit." Noah's eyes widened. "I can visit?" Dr. Elise Monroe smiled. "Yes, you can. It might take some time to arrange, but they'd like you to be part of the baby's life." Noah's heart felt light for the first time in weeks. "I'd love that," he said. A few weeks later, Noah visited the foster family's home. The foster mom, Mrs. Grace Linton, greeted him warmly and introduced him to the baby. "We named him James," she said, "but you can call him Jamie." Noah knelt by Jamie, his heart full of joy as Jamie grabbed his finger with a tiny hand. In that moment, Noah knew he had made a difference. Jamie was safe, loved, and happy, and that was all Noah had ever wanted. If you enjoyed this story and would like to see more content like it, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all our latest, inspiring and heartwarming stories, and have the opportunity to engage with our growing community. Additionally, I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to sharing more captivating narratives with you.